Welcome to GOA's Ask Me Anything live event. How do we cultivate belonging? In today's live event, we will hear from Associate Director of Student Equity and Success, Ellen Min-Hartman, as well as a panel of GOA teachers. They're going to be discussing how to design learning experiences that cultivate belonging and support students' well-being. To cultivate belonging is fundamentally to set the environmental conditions that can allow students and student learning to thrive. Given the seismic shifts of the past 2 years, as educators, we are more than ever attuned to this important concept. In a moment, we'll hear from our panelists who will offer insights and strategies to support cultivating belonging, whether in person or online. And with that, I'll introduce our panelists. I'll start by talking a little bit about Ellen Min-Hartman. She will be our moderator today, and she is the Associate Director of Student Equity and Success at GOA. Ellen today will be in conversation with 3 members of GOA's faculty: Ale Cantu, who is an educator at American School Foundation of Monterrey in Mexico; Jacob Crowder, who's an educator at Brookstone School in Georgia; and Joel Garza, who's an educator at Green Hills School in Texas. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Ellen.
Hello and welcome. It's so exciting to have so many people here. And I would just like to start off and jump right in by this idea of defining belonging. And so I'd love to ask our wonderful panelists here today, just to kick it off, to get a sense of what belonging looks, sounds, and feels like. Can you tell me a little bit about a time when you didn't feel like you belonged, and then compare that with a time that you actually did feel a sense of belonging?
Thanks, Ellen. My name's Joel, everybody. I got started teaching as an adjunct. I called roll for the first time at El Centro Community College in the fall of 1993. I was definitely included in the faculty. I got memos. I was expected to attend meetings. I didn't feel belonging as an adjunct. And I guess in thinking through this with the panel, that's an important distinction between inclusion and belonging. I might, as an orchestra member, have passed the audition. Congratulations, you are included in the orchestra. One thing that I love about GOA is how it has trained me to create opportunities for students to take responsibility for their own learning and the learning of their classmates. So I might be included in the orchestra, but it really takes the entire cello section to make me feel like I belong, that we're working as a unit, that we are, kind of high-fiving each other when we do well. I think that perhaps in a very ad hoc way, I've not intellectualized this before, but I really think that belonging depends so much on the students, and it might happen naturally, and it's more certain to happen if we create deliberate opportunities for students to turn and learn from one another, to share who they are, and to share where they feel like they're really missing the target. You can feel like you belong when you're not doing well in a course. If somebody in the room says, you know what, me too, that's a challenge that I'm working on also.
Hi, everyone. When I read this question, we got some of those questions before this panel began, and I read that, and it took me immediately to when I was in high school, and I had 2 teachers. Well, I had many teachers, but I had 2 teachers at the time that were complete opposite of each other, and one of them was, not to put anybody down, but the math teacher was not very approachable, and she would purposefully make you not feel welcome, and in her manner and the way she spoke to students. And if you were not doing well in class, and well, that was me, it was even more evident. And I hated going to that class. But then when I left that class, I went to the next class, which was art history. And the teacher was so warm and welcoming. And she would, like, she did what I think we all do just by nature, but like, she would ask about my day. She would ask a little bit about my family. She would ask a little bit about the things that I liked. And I loved going to her class. And it was such a clash in the same day to go to one class where I just wanted the hour to be over so I could get out of there. And then I would go to this other class and be like, oh, okay, I'm here. It's good. And so after several years of teaching, I just keep going back to that feeling of which class do I want to be in? Obviously, I want to be in the class where I feel welcome. And so I tried to do some of those things that she did so that my students feel welcome when they come into my class. And they hopefully never feel like this is the worst class ever and they just need to get out of here. But that's where I went when I read that question.
I thought about a lot a time in college where I was a part of, by just some bizarre circumstances, I was a part of a course that was well outside of my major. It was one of those things that I needed to, somehow mistakenly got put into it. It was a ceramics course, a ceramics workshop course for art majors that were in their junior year of their experience working on their portfolios. And by some mismanagement of the registrar's office, I, as a computer science major, ended up in that class as an elective. The moment I walked in the class, the teacher came in and said, where is this computer science major that has been stuck in art that I'm stuck with now? And he made no bones about the fact that I didn't need to be in there. I shouldn't be in there. Why was I in there? I wanted to know the same thing. But this piece about that, and that sort of matriculated to the other students in the course, is that I was out of place and wasn't a part of this group that had these shared experiences and that had been through this piece. And so here I was, not only in the wrong place, but almost interloping, in this environment. And so there's this immediate feeling of I'm wrong, and never even met these people. And I was out of place. But it was just this feeling of that there was never an opportunity to connect. And I think that's what we're going to hear a lot today, is this piece about validation and this piece about acceptance. Is that when you do feel belonging, which came later as well in college for me, when I became part of my counseling cohort, that was just like, fitting into a group that we all sort of shared. We were able to share experiences. Their professors engaged us in ways that made us feel heard and made us feel seen. We might have had all completely different backgrounds, but we were able to see each other, right? To hear each other, to give each other value and worth for what, we might contribute to that cohort. And that piece right there, that piece of feeling important and feeling valuable, whether you agree with the person next to you or not, was miles and miles of what made me feel like I belonged. And so there was that piece of where I felt like I was, a sore thumb, or a pair of brown shoes in a world of black tuxedos. I was this piece that wasn't matching. And then here I am in this other world where even if I wasn't the same as everyone else, I was being heard and I was being valued for my contribution to that group. And then everyone was treating everyone that way. And you had no other choice but to feel that you belonged. And so I think we're going to hear a lot about that, I think, as we talk today about this piece about connection and being seen and being heard. And so that's just what I thought about when I saw that question the other day.
Thank you so much. I know that the concept of belonging can seem very vague, but to make it so concrete for us, what I heard and what resonated with me was this idea of being valued, this idea of safety, being able to show up as your complete, whole, authentic self and be accepted and seen and heard in that space, to be welcomed. These are the things that I heard from everyone. It's that idea that, yes, you can be included, but when you show up in all the dimensions that make you who you are, in all your ways that you're diverse, what happens to you as a full person when you show up into a space? I love Brene Brown, and she has this idea, this definition of what true belonging is. And it's that idea that it doesn't require you to change who you are. It just requires you to be who you are. So to be able to show up into a space, to be completely in all the ways that you are authentically yourself, seen, heard, welcomed, valued, accepted. That is what belonging is versus inclusion. Thank you so much for making that concrete. So the second question revolves a little bit around our state of school, especially in these last 2 years. Schools have experienced significant disruptions. There were questions coming in about a lot of what's happening with social media and schools having disruptions, even now that students are back or maybe in a hybrid format. So let me ask our wonderful panelists, what's the current state of belonging at your schools, and what are you noticing and seeing with your students?
Last week, my school on March 13 of 2020, we went home and we started distance learning. And until last week, this is the second week of full face-to-face, were we able to go back to the building. So it was more than 500 days of not being in the building with my students. And right now, one of the things that I am noticing is that students want to have that connection, but they have been out of the building for so long that it's hard for them. It's hard for them to be in a room with everybody else. It's like, oh, so loud, oh my God. And then at the same time, they love being here, because they had been out of school for so long. And so I'm really just trying to do a little bit of checking in with them, do a little bit of like being able to do small groups or have them be able to go to different parts of the building while they are working and then come back and check in with me, just so that they start finding their place back, because there's like a disjointment of them wanting to be here but being uncomfortable again. So yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
I guess you're reminding me of all of these constituencies at play on my campus. So this is going to be an independent school privilege confessional. I've got administrators that I trust to do the right things with health protocols. I've got families that are supportive of the work that I'm trying to guide their students through. I've got driven students eager to do their best. I've got wild academic freedom. I think no matter where we are as an independent school instructor with those four things, I've got to leverage each of those things in everything that I do. Most recently, thinking about the students that are driven and want to do their best, we have on this campus seen tremendous leadership from our students in talking lower classmen through this TikTok vandalism madness. In our experience, I'm sure we've seen moments when a dean of students needs to scold 400 kids at once, right? That lands in the way that you might expect with teenagers. However, when, Josie, the student body president, stands up, claims that time to not just say, here's an announcement from the Latinx Student Union, when she takes the time to say, we are better than these soap dispensers in the toilets. We are better than, this Instagram, this Snapchat account that y'all are making to rate one another. We are better than that. I think so. Ellen, the returning has meant that at a high school like mine, we've got freshmen who are even more immature than you would expect. And I think our campus has, again, been able to leverage each of those constituencies in a way to bring out the best in who we are as a community. Those four things. My friend Jessica, who teaches at a public school in Flint, Michigan, she has none of those four things. Freedom, supportive families, default-driven students in an administration that's really trying to do the best for her. I just think that leveraging any one of those things at any moment is probably going to yield some important results.
I want to jump on to a couple of statements I'm seeing in the chat. One statement I'm reading here says, "My students are afraid of tests and assessments after long periods of online learning." I want to just sort of echo that. We've been, I'm in Georgia, so we've been back in person for a long time. And we've been in mass, and there's this piece. There's this fear piece, this sort of underwritten fear piece that we're seeing in our students that's taking form in a lot of ways, whether it's increased anxiety over tests and assignments. You can almost see an anxiety over, how do I connect with people again? How do I interact? I have this barrier over my face throughout the day, and we've almost sort of created this sort of faux isolation, even though we're amongst our peers. And so what we're sort of battling in our own brick and mortar is this idea of, how do we feed this really visceral desire to have visual empathy, right? Our kids are dying for a smile and to see each other's faces, and our faculty are the same way. And so that's huge into this idea of belonging, and like that struggle of what we're trying to do is, how do we create that empathy? How do we create that recognition, when we're behind these masks, when we're spaced out in our protocols, and how do we remind students how to embrace that humanity, right? Because they've been separated for so long. And now they're divided by plexiglass or by masks or various spacing protocols. So how do we sort of maintain their social health, in that space, in that brick and mortar space? And we're seeing that sort of crop up in a variety of ways through different types of anxiety, depression, or even just sort of an ignorance of that human contact piece, of not knowing what to do when someone interacts with them, or not knowing how to handle that. And so I think that that's a really big feature for all of us now in a variety of our brick and mortars, is how do we help our students reconnect to that social health? How do we help them reconnect to that visible empathy that helps us connect with our students, helps them connect with their peers, so that they can know. You'd be surprised the power of being able to throw a smile to a child, or for them to be able to give one back. How many miscommunications have we had because we haven't been able to accurately gauge a face? And so that's been sort of the big challenge in terms of how we're developing belonging sort of in our brick and mortar, is how do we make those moments more pronounced when we are behind a mask or behind plexiglass or spaced out or not eating in the same lunch wave, or those kinds of things. Like how do we sort of pronounce those moments? And I think that that's going to be a big challenge for teachers all over the world, is we still are social creatures that desire to connect with each other. We desire to see each other, to touch each other, to be around each other. And that's universal regardless of our language or our beliefs. And so I think it's really important for us to find ways to demonstrate that, whether we're behind a mask or behind plexiglass or spaced out. I think that that's sort of the thing that we're seeing at our school, at our brick and mortar.
Thank you so much. And what I'm hearing from the state of the schools is there's this tension. There's this tension because students are craving and wanting so much to be connected. And if you are in a hybrid or in-person environment, there's also this hesitation of jumping in and saying, okay, I've been so far removed from this. I found myself really digging into what is happening, and Hoel kind of made mention to what's happening on social media, that there is some vandalism of schools. And there's a quote that I found from a book that I just finished, Tribe, by Sebastian Jung, that said, Junger, that says, when you throw trash on the ground, you apparently don't see yourself as truly belonging to the world that you're walking in. So it's this idea that you have to not only have belonging with a group of people, but in that space, like what does it mean to belong to that space? And so that space is a part of your authentic self and the way that you view your community. And so I'm seeing a lot in the chat, and we're getting into now the strategies, and we have 3 incredible people here to help us with that. but it's that idea of wellness. Okay, so we know that educators need to intentionally focus on cultivating belonging in their classroom environment, whether it's in person, online, or hybrid. So this is what we're hearing loud and clear. But belonging, connecting to student wellness. What are some of the strategies that teachers can use to promote wellness through belonging?
I'll jump in on that one early. I think it's really important for you to, one of our division heads really lived on the mantra of slow down. And I think that we have to do that. I think we get so caught up in our content delivery, especially if you're teaching an IB class or an AP class or something along that line. We've got to push our content. You have to take the time to really have those moments of check-in with your students. That is how you build belonging, is through that connection, acceptance, and validation. The physical, like nuts and bolts, boots on the ground, how you actually do it is you spend time with your kids, right, every day, and take time to connect. And that doesn't mean just idle chatter. It doesn't mean just, taking time to let everybody kind of chat with each other, but it's talking with your students about the specific things that are going on in their lives, and not only hearing them say that, but then banking it and bringing it back at a later time, showing them that you remember something about them, showing them that you think that what they say is important, because you're modeling that to them. And then they turn and in turn demonstrate that with their peers. And that it's important to not only just carry on a conversation, but to be active in understanding what we're all going through. They may just want to tell you about a sporting event that they're having or something that they did with their families that weekend. But it's so important to slow those moments down when we're trying to reconnect. And because that's what it is, because we feel almost like we're cheating because we're not delivering content, because I'm not talking about math right now. I'm talking about the weekend. This can't be valuable, but it is that much more valuable in this scenario, where the issue that we're seeing is our students being unable to connect with us and their peers because of this distance, because of this isolation. It is absolutely imperative to have those moments, to revisit those moments, and then to celebrate each other. One of the things that I tell my GOA students, that I never see them face to face, will never see them face to face, more than likely, is as I ask them to tell me about something that's going on in their life that we can sort of upvote and celebrate in our Twist channel chats, because that's important to them. And if you can understand what this person is doing, maybe they're on a swim team, right? And maybe they spend three days a week at the pool or 4 days a week at the pool. And so you get a picture into what this person's life is like, and you have an opportunity to have some real empathy with them, to really sort of discover, like, this is what informs their week and how they come to your class and how they are energized or not energized for your course. And if you can take interest in the thing that they're interested in, then that reciprocates back to what you're doing. When someone feels that you care about them, everything is opened and everything is accelerated for you to do, whether that's making a friendship, teaching them content, helping them through a problem. All of that gets accelerated when someone feels that they're invested in. And I cannot stress that enough. That's something that we all have to do. We can't just limit that to our counselors or limit that to parents. Like, we all have to sort of jump in that even more in this time. So that's like a big passion thing for me. So you find a way to connect with your kids. You should know something about every one of your kids. And if you say, I don't have time for that, then you're going to just make more time for yourself in doing more work, because that's going to help shorten things up for you exponentially. So.
Jacob, you're making me feel better about my skepticism over wellness as a standalone thing on campuses. Okay. When wellness gets deployed on many campuses, it feels like an add-on. It feels like something else. Like, well, you've got to make time in your already busy schedule to, like, blow bubbles or, whatever the wellness activity is. And the way that you're describing wellness is actually, that it's the result. It's the result of deliberate working through relationships with kids. It's the result of patient relationship building, not just between you and the kid, but giving them authentic turn and learn moments, in some very real ways. We ourselves are the content of our courses. They learn a lot just by sussing out who we are. I love, every time I get a haircut, I walk in, they're like, did you get a haircut? It's like, holy smokes. Yeah, like, yes. Okay. They're really paying attention to how we are and who we are. And, to your point about slowing things down, within the slowing down, toward the end of a class, shout outs and takeaways, pretty please, by name, signal boost a person in the room that made you glad that you are here today, right? In that last 5 minutes of class, be honest. What is one moment where you were like, I used to think this, but now I think that, right? That clarity about the value of the time together creates wellness in a way that really takes root. When you've got an advisory wellness protocol, here's this activity, here's this handout, here's this way that we're supposed to be, building a tower together, or, performing some sort of thing, that stuff washes off their back like it should, like it should, So I appreciate you walking through relationships, patience. Look, on my campus, perhaps on yours. I've got students for 4 years. I trust my colleagues in my department unreservedly. I don't have to do everything right now. I guess one last thing. Teenagers, in my experience, have a lot of people surrounding them that are impatient for them to get to the next level, right? If you could do this so that you will have a productive college application, do this so that you can become the dermatologist that you want to be or whatever, right? I think that as often as possible, Jacob, like you're saying, let them know who you are right now is valuable. Who you are right now is weird and hilarious, and I'm glad you're here. Who you are right now, you make this not just another class, you make this our class. Thank you for being that person.
To build up on what my colleagues just shared, thank you guys. It's one of the things I tried to do. One of the things that I realized I had to be even more have more intent on doing when I started teaching GOA was creating relationships, because as we said, we will never probably see them, ever. We will maybe never meet in person. And so how do I joke with you? How do I make you, like, one of the things I'd like to do with my kids is, get a laugh out of them, because it will make them feel a little bit more comfortable, but it's so hard to do it when we're through a screen, right? And so in my twist, I created a channel called Checking In. And every Sunday, and this was based on something that Joel was doing. Thank you, Joel. Checking in with Mr. Garza, or I don't know what you call it, Sundays chats with coffee with Mr. I don't know what you call it, man, but something. Thank you. And so I started using every Sunday I check in with my kids, and I have a friend who is a grief counselor, and she created these images that she calls scales. And it's just 3 images that range. I'll put in some examples and her webpage on the chat in a sec, so you guys can see it, and you can sign up and get free scales if you think this is something that you would like to use. But so every Sunday I tell them a little story about how my week went and, something that happened. And then I ask them, where are you? And I put up one of those scales. And so I was talking to my friend Mary, who's the designer and owner of the scales. And it was like 3 or 4 weeks in, and I was getting nothing from the kids. Usually I put up the scale and they tell me, oh, I'm more to the left or more to the right. Or it was just crickets, man. I was like, Mary, I'm going to break their ice cold hearts one day. And finally I did. They started responding, and I'm like, I was so excited, because finally I felt that that connection was made, and that they were sharing a little bit about who they are, and something that was personal to them. And from there, it just felt like they twist me more, they send me more messages, they ask me more questions, and I just think that the class is flowing better. And so that's something I do with my GOA kids, but I also do here in my brick and mortar school as well. I also showed them, I shared a video with them. I am a football fan. I know it makes no sense, but I love the Tennessee Titans, even though I'm in Monterrey, Mexico. And they won last night. Woo! And so I shared a video with them at the beginning of the school, because NFL season was about to have its kickoff. And there's a video that I will share here as well, because I love it. And it's called "Who's Got Your Back?" And it's just these like different football players from different ages and different genders and all. And they're just, it's all about who's got your back. And so I told them, like, I know we just started the class, but I'm hoping that sooner rather than later, we'll be able to say, I got your back. And so those are kind of like the things I share with them on Sundays. And sometimes I get responses, sometimes I don't, but I know they're listening. So it feels good.
Thank you. I'm trying to find a way to connect this all and summarize it. And I kept thinking, I was like, wow, I think what it comes down to is that idea of being present. So I know Sarah asked in the chat about, you said belonging is not about being who you are, not about being who you are, not changing who you are, but it's like with middle school students, they're constantly changing. And what I hear, Jacob is saying that giving that care and connection and saying, I see you, I value you. And Joel saying, even if you are someone right now, I appreciate it, I see it, even if that changes tomorrow, to appreciate the journey. And Ali is saying, come on, we need to just focus on the now. Like, how are you feeling right now? That idea of mindfulness, being present, and wellness and belonging is being aware of yourself, even if it might be in flux, but knowing that there's someone there who cares, and that adult being the teacher to kind of guide you through that process. So thank you on belonging and wellness and making that connection for us. This next section is about student voice, choice, and agency, which is huge in the sense of allowing students to feel that sense of belonging, connection, value. And so there are two parts to this question. And the first part being, a lot of questions coming in about students, screen time, social media, and how can schools support students who self-isolate into their screens, especially more so now in the past 2 years? How do we negotiate the fact that many of our students, especially during COVID, relied on social media for belonging? And those questions come out, how social media is creating cultures of belonging, sometimes more so than schools. And so we see those school disruptions. And in discussing this with Sarah, just when we had our pre-meeting, it was very interesting because I thought, I look at my own child who's 9 years old, and I see her getting lost in social media because she has that agency. She's like, well, Mom, this is great. I get to make and design my own house. I get to pick out the clothes on Roblox and do my own fashion show, and I get rated, but then I can change. And it was so interesting to see how she had this level of agency, which created belonging in this space, in social media or in a video game, that she's connecting with, not existing in this present day. So it's that question, how do we negotiate the fact that many students rely on social media for belonging? To our panel members.
At the beginning of my career, I would never have imagined that my greatest professional development would be through something like Twitter. So I'm as much as I mean, in our classrooms, I don't know if you can see behind me, there's like a shoe caddy where students walk in, they leave their phones in there. In my classroom, people come with the old school black and white composition books. As much as I create moments for them to be present, pencil to paper, I understand how, like your daughter, Ellen, my own interests have deepened thanks to finding like-minded people online. I think, the way to manage social media and perhaps even learn something about it for yourself would be to walk students through an analysis of it. There's a 4-step process that Barbara Love has. If you just Google Barbara Love liberatory consciousness, a 4-step process for just about anything, awareness, analysis, action, allyship / accountability, right? So this is a process that you can deploy for, your own physical well-being, your own relationships, your social media habits, your media consumption habits, right? Like, what are the stories? As an English teacher, I think about this a lot, right? What are the stories that I'm centering in my classroom and in my own reading? And what are the ones that I am ignoring? It helps to have a searching and fearless moral inventory every now and then. That's step 4 from Alcoholics Anonymous, a searching and fearless moral inventory. There are definitely moments, Ellen, where I do need my advisory to have screens down. And very often, what we've got in that moment is, they're interacting on something that's valuable to them. They're interacting on something that makes them laugh, and it's not mean-spirited, So I guess for me, I would encourage anybody worried about a student's social media habits, walk them through a protocol that is no shame, no blame, no guilt. But after this analysis, you cannot say that you have not been told, right? That kind of analysis, I have found with my students, leads them to some really interesting choices in whom to follow and how to interact online.
To follow up with what Joel is saying, yeah, the internet has many wonderful things, and then it can also make us very isolated from everybody else. But one of the things I'm seeing with both my students and my children, I have 2 daughters, one in 8th grade and one in 3rd grade. And one of the things that is making my 8th grade daughter motivated to come to school, I mean, she's very happy to come back, but that is tangible and has nothing to do with social media, is she has been cast in a middle school play musical. And, she is now rehearsing with her peers and friends after school. And, it might be just for an hour and a half, but just creating those moments where they can have, like a club they can attend, or like the school play, or something that is not related to screen time, where they can socialize in a safe environment, where they feel comfortable. Well, maybe it's not a large group, or maybe it is, depending on what they like. But just having that really, like, it just made her smile. And every time she comes back from rehearsal, she tells me about it. And again, this is an 8th grader who I ask, how are you? Fine, good, bad, again, one sentence, one word answers. And when she comes back from rehearsal, she tells me about it and she's excited. And so if you are able to create, or you already have, but you can create a space for your students and a moment for them to have that, to be able to have those connections, again, through a club, through just sometimes kids coming to my room after school. I'm the high school art teacher, and they come to my room and they want to, they take one of these tiles and they paint them, and then they put them back for me. And they call it a crafternoon. And so they come to crafternoon in my room, and it's just a moment for them, and so that's something I would suggest.
I know I keep going back to the chat, but I really like this, and I want to kind of use this to sort of hinge on what I want to say. Rebecca, thank you for your post. It said, I think we need to also be careful to not negate those experiences on social media as not real life. They're very much real life opportunities for belonging. I think that we, and you're going to have to bear with this, we as old people, which is what we as old people have different feelings about social media than our students. And that's okay. And it's okay for them to live in this environment and to thrive in it and to have meaningful interactions and experiences in social media. That's okay. We don't have to do computers are bad, that kind of thing. We don't have to go down that path. I think what we do need to do, though, is we need to break it down for where the hiccups are occurring within that new framework of sort of social interaction. And the thing that I worry about, that we as adults and mentors to these students can sort of help them along with, is one of the drives for wanting to be more active in social media is that thing that Ellen talked about very early on, is that agency piece, is that I can choose the environment that I want to be in online. I can choose the group of people, I can choose the content, I can choose the life that I want to lead online completely. And that agency is so powerful, and we work to incorporate it into our lessons, because we know that when students have choice, that they are more invested. And so you have this piece where they can dial this experience into exactly what they want. And that is where one of the issues can hang up, is that dialing in of preference creates a polarizing environment. And our students become less likely to deal with difference, because everything that they're encountering online is so specifically geared to them, is so specifically geared to their interests, their friend groups. Everything is created by them, is curated in a way that it's stuff that they enjoy. It's stuff that they want to see every day. If it's something that they don't want to see, it gets moved off the plate. It's not part of their social experience anymore, right? And so what we can do as adults, what we can do as teachers, as mentors, is we can come alongside of our students and realize that one of the reasons that they're choosing this, right? One of the reasons that they're choosing this customized environment, this experience, is to be able to find that belonging, to be able to find complete and utter acceptance, right? Because maybe the thing that I'm interested in isn't the thing that everyone else is interested in. So I feel like I'm on an island. But here in my social media, I'm not on an island. There are other people that share that space with me, that feel how I feel. And so what we can do, one thing you can do in your own classroom, is you can realize that no student ever has to be on an island while you're in that classroom, is you can be one other person on that island with them. Find ways to connect with that thing that your kid likes. And Joel said it's so great to embrace the strange and the weird. And that is the joy of teaching school. That is the joy of working with students, whether they're littles or bigs, is that they are strange and beautiful creatures, that we can enjoy that difference and we can enjoy that nuance that has nothing to do with us. So helping that student remember, hey, you're not on an island, and you don't always have to go into that world to feel like you're off of the island, that I'll be on it with you. I may not understand what you enjoy. I may not even get it, but I'm going to try. And I'm going to give it a good shot at trying to understand the thing that brings you joy. The other piece of that is helping our students. The idea of conflict resolution is getting to be such a nuanced thing. We think about it in terms of like helping kids learn to not argue or to disagree or everything. But with that polarization of social media, involvement of everything just being so dialed into only what I agree with, our students are losing at an exponential rate the ability to deal with things that are different from themselves. We're becoming more isolated and only seeing the things that we want to see and only believing the things that we want to believe. And so when we come across somebody that doesn't feel that way, it's so much easier to just not deal with them. It's so much easier to just not hear them. And so we're sitting here having a discussion about what it means to belong. And our own students are crippling their own sense of belonging and understanding and difference without even realizing it. They feel like they're escaping the idea that they're different, and then in turn creating sort of an unwillingness to produce their own empathy. And that's something that we need to challenge our own students towards. And that's a variety of topics. That covers everything from the way we look to the things we believe to the things we say. We need to offer safe opportunities, professional opportunities for them to disagree, for them to have difference in their lives, to celebrate difference in their lives. And this doesn't always have to look like a racial thing. It doesn't have to look like a faith thing. This can just be on any walk of our lives. So just as human beings, we need to be able to be comfortable with difference of opinion. We need to be able to be comfortable with disagreement. And how we do that in a academic way, how we do it in a professional way, in a kind and humane way. And I think that is something that we can do to sort of help deal with some of the polarization that comes from being on that screen all the time and not having to interact with people who may not think like they think. And I think that that's important as well.
And Jacob, that leads perfectly into, because now it's basically taking what you're saying, which is correct, and saying, how do we do that? What are the strategies? So this is the idea of challenges, How do you cultivate belonging in a classroom when you have students with serious differences in values and philosophies? What are some of the concrete strategies you use? Occasionally, students make a mistake and do something that adversely affects other students' sense of belonging. What strategies do you use to intervene? Or if a student has an unexpected behavior in this way, how do you hold them accountable without compromising their sense of belonging? So this is a whole bunch of questions kind of smushed into one, but I'm asking our panelists to kind of choose and say, which one resonates with you? Which one would you like to speak to?
I'll jump in with just one thing and then I'll jump out real quick. It starts with me. I think that the best way to teach the acceptance of difference is that it has to start with me being willing to be human and often failing in front of my students. When you are willing to fail in front of your students, I think there is this is my own thing and it works for me, and you may be afraid of it, but I think there is no greater tool than we have as teachers than our own self-deprecation. I think the vulnerability of being able to be open and honest when you mess up, and we mess up often. And if you're one of those teachers that don't mess up, we can talk later about how that really goes. But we mess up. Let them see that. Let them see you mess up. Just like when we're in GOA videos, we talk about, hey, do it in one take. Becky, who's somewhere on this call, was great at sort of teaching me that sort of that humility of not making video after video after video and just accepting it for what it is. And that's a beautiful thing. Just let your children see how messy you are. Let them see how you're just holding it together some days too. You don't have to have all the answers. And when you do that, they learn that it's okay for them to mess up. They learn that it's okay for others to mess up. And that we're all in the struggle sometimes. And so, I think it starts with me. So that's my tidbit on that.
And I guess, Jacob, when I'm modeling that, I guess, Sarah, you were putting it in the chat, like modeled empathy, or, when this starts with me, I lean on just patience and listening. This is a lot today, Lucas. I don't want to give you a rushed or improvised refutation here. May I think about this and get back to you? Because I really want to make sure that I'm not answering you emotionally, right? We also, in moments like you're describing, Ellen, we have no idea what's happening in their lives, right? I've got an advisee going out for the basketball team, has been doing private basketball coaching. And I need you to know this kid is probably not going to make the basketball team. That's going to be a hard day for him. There are students that we all have whose family members are sick, whose family members are living with addiction, whose family members are losing jobs, whose family members are neurodivergent and not dealing well. We have no idea in most cases what they're going through. And so being able in the moment to say, that comment landed a little bit, I'm not sure you meant it that way, Lucas. Can I think about it and get back to you? Right? I really hope that we recognize the power, of just letting a thought sit for a little while. The emotions kind of somehow just sink down to manageable. This is one of the reasons I almost never answer a parent email immediately. They're usually emailing me in a really, really emotional state. If I can reply to them 18 hours later, they've already surfed through the whole thing. The same thing, Ellen, with most of these comments that might compromise belonging, right? In some cases, it might be just a 15-year-old, usually a young man, who's recognizing the power of sarcasm, right? Or who was just grappling with the fact that like any attention is good attention, so I'm going to tease this person, right? And in my experience, it would be easy to just like publicly like body them, right? And it's much more effective and long-term positive to address it calmly, return to it later, hoping that they don't just have an upset stomach, right? Or that it's that it was something that maybe was explainable and out of character for them.
And just to wrap up, because I know we're close to the end, both what Joel and Jacob said resonate with me, slowing down and also accepting when we make mistakes. So I am a Leo and it's very hard for me to accept when I make a mistake, and it's something I'm working on. So when I do, I really try to just like, oh my God, like Miss Cantu, I don't know, whatever I did that was obviously like very obvious that I made a mistake. I'm like, oh my God, I did that. Okay, let's go back. Let's go fix it, and not make a big deal about it, but also accept, like, I think it humanizes us. It just makes us relatable, and it gives them permission to make a mistake as well. I teach high school art, and my kids sometimes walk in, and the first day they walk in, they're like, "Hey, Miss, I don't know how to draw." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool, sit down." And it's just showing them that I made a mistake allows them to not sometimes draw the perfect tree in their head, or whatever idea they had of whatever they want to draw. And it's okay. We're here to learn, and so, yeah.
I want to thank you all again so much for your time today. I want to thank you, panelists, and Ellen, for sharing your insights and leading us through this incredible conversation. And we hope you all will continue to learn with us in the future. Thank you so much.